Hey, hockey fans, it's Sandeep Janda from Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi, and you're watching the show, and I have a very, very special guest today. You know him, you love him, AEW star. He's won everything, he's done everything. Brian Danielson, welcome to Hockey Night in Canada Punjabi.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course, it's
big
great.
night for you guys.
That's right. We've got the Vancouver Canucks Edmonton Oilers series going on in this city right now, but also AEW is coming to town. That's why you're in town.
Yes.
We'll get into that in a second, but our audience loves hockey, loves wrestling. Goes back to the old country. You're a wrestler. You've dabbled in the hockey world a little bit. Is there a connection? Is there a kinship between hockey players and wrestlers?
So I think so. I think like all hockey players have a little bit of pro wrestler in them, right? But it's really funny because you don't see it on like TV or whatever it is. But when I've been like backstage or right out there with the hockey players, I didn't realize how big everybody is. Like, they're all giants. And then they put their skates on and then their pads, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like,
they're all kind of like Paul White's on skates, essentially.
Yeah. And then here's the thing that I think is really interesting. Fighting on skates, right? Because there's a lot of fighting in hockey. And I can't even fathom, like I've been taking my daughter ice skating, and I can't even fathom fighting somebody on ice skates. And they do it all the time, and they're great at it. Like, I see some of the guys, I was like, whoa, that was a sweet punch. And it was just like, how do you do that on ice skates?
Okay, you're underselling yourself a little bit. You've done some pretty incredible things in the squared circle as well. So, having watched you over the years, big wrestling guy, our producer Raja, who's here as well, is a big wrestling guy as well. But I do want to ask you about hockey a little bit because you're from the Pacific Northwest, Aberdeen, if I'm not mistaken, Washington, Washington State, proudly. You always talk about it. Have you been to a Seattle Kraken game? What do you think? It's 2 years in the league now.
Yeah, so I went to a preseason game in October last year. I really enjoyed it. I think live hockey is really fun. It's hard for me to follow any sports right now. But yeah, I loved it. I love the energy of a hockey arena. So it was awesome.
All right, have they asked you to do anything special? Have you dropped the ceremonial puck? Have you riled up the crowd yet? Has that happened yet? I think we threw out T-shirts. I think we had those gun T-shirts, right? Or the T-shirt guns where you just like pa pa pa, and we were doing some of that, so that was fun. So you've been to a Kraken game, you've been to an Islanders game, New Jersey Devils. You dropped the ceremonial puck for the Springfield Thunderbirds as well in the AHL. What's the difference between a hockey crowd and a wrestling crowd? Are there any similarities?
There are a lot of similarities. The big difference, I think, is the allegiance to the hometown team, right? So you get very much, it's a little bit like wrestling, and you have like a good guy and a bad guy, but everybody is cheering for the same good guy, right? When you go to a hockey game. And so, whereas if you go to a wrestling event, like some people have varying degrees of love or hate for each independent wrestler, whatever it is. So yeah, that's the big difference. But the one thing that I think crowds of both hockey and pro wrestling that they like is they love a good fight.
Of course. And so I'm glad you brought up the home field advantage, so to speak, because in hockey we talk about it all the time, home ice advantage. You're going to have, after the event on Saturday, May 11th in Vancouver, you're going to your home state. Is there a home field advantage in pro wrestling as well? Is there like a different pop that you experience when you're at home?
Yeah, I mean, it's just the crowd tends to like you more where you're from. That most people, some people not so much.
Okay. Have you ever taken shots at the hometown or the home state?
So there, when I was in WWE, they had me do this thing that wasn't on TV, but they didn't want me to be cheered in Seattle. Okay. So they tried to do this thing that only aired to the live crowd. That was like, Seattle. I'm from Washington State, but I'm from Aberdeen, and Seattle actually sucks, right? Something like that. And it was not very effective.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, but I think most people know of my love for Washington State and my love for the Pacific Northwest in general. I think the there's borders for things, right? We create these borders for things, but if you look at the Pacific Northwest and you look at like from Washington up into Vancouver, it feels the same, right? Regardless of okay, well, this is actually a different country, not even a different state or a different province, a different country, but it feels to me like, especially the way people are and that sort of thing, and the environment. I just, I love this area.
Yeah,
so.
and you've spoken well, and we've done an interview together previously on radio as well about your interest outside of wrestling, which coincide with where you're from as well. There's a big part of that.
Yeah.
And I love hearing about that. I want to get into wrestling now because this is also, like I said, I'm a big wrestling fan. A lot of our viewers are fans as well. I'm going to have a little bit of a word association game here.
Okay.
I'll say a name or a subject, and you give me a 1 or 2 word answer.
Okay.
Let's start with Adam Copeland.
Oh. It's hard because,
You can use more than 2 words.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say 1 or 2 words, but I think of him as hyper intelligent, which means, super, when you talk to him, he's a smart guy.
All right, I'm going to come with another Canadian as well.
Okay.
Christian Cage.
Ooh, slimy. He's slimy.
Okay. This is a subject more than a person. The GOAT Canadian wrestler.
Okay. Gosh. I would have to say this is going to be controversial.
I love it.
It's
Love it
going to
already.
be controversial. Kenny Omega.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's, when you watch him, and he's hurt right now,
Yep.
but he's one of the most fantastic wrestlers you'll ever see, right?
I love the answer.
Yeah. It's going to be controversial.
But there's going to be a lot of people from the Heart Dungeon that are not going to like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge Bret Hart fan, right? But I think when you watch Kenny Omega, who wrestles for AEW, he's hurt now, but yeah, I love Bret Hart, love the Hart family, all of that kind of thing. But when you look at Kenny Omega's best stuff, it's just incredible.
Okay,
So.
this dovetails perfectly into my next question.
Okay.
Because I'm putting you on the spot here. This is
Okay.
kind of a rapid fire. We do this on our show. Your Mount Rushmore of wrestlers, pro wrestlers.
Oh no,
Yep.
that's
Impossible?
It's not a thing in the sense of because there's so many things to enjoy. We get stuck in this tribalism, and it's happening with all these different things, right? Not just wrestling, all sorts of different politics, all that stuff. But it's but I appreciate so many different wrestlers, and so many different wrestlers have been fantastic at what they do, right?
True.
There's guys who are fantastic at just being guys who get beat up really well. Right,
Yeah.
so there's I refuse to partake. There's some games that you can just say hey, I'm not going to play this game.
And you know what? I'm okay with that. Because I mentioned before, we've talked before. I like how the thought process is.
Yeah.
But I will ask this question, a remix
Okay.
of the question.
Yep, remix of the
Are there
question.
current peers in AEW that you look at and say, you know what, this guy, you learn from every day,
Yeah.
where it's kind of a constant education. I'm sure you, of course, play a mentor role to a lot of guys on the roster and a lot of women on the roster. But is there somebody you look at and say, you know what, I'm learning a lot from this individual?
Well, you can learn from almost everybody, and I think that's one of the keys. But I think somebody like an Adam Copeland, right, is such a fantastic person to learn from. But I learn a lot even from younger people because, for example, I'm 42. I'm going to be 43 soon. I've been wrestling for 25 years. The younger generation looks for different things in their wrestling. The last time I was a wrestling fan. Well, a fan and not a wrestler is okay, what do I want from wrestling? It was in the late 1990s, right? So that's 25 years have passed. So it's when I talk to the young guys, I'm like, what is about wrestling that drew you to this? Because the wrestling world has changed. The whole world has changed. I mean, we didn't have cell phones that could do FaceTime or whatever it is. The entire world has changed in the last 25 years. So I like to learn a lot from everybody. I think everybody's got something to teach you about what you do.
It's a constant evolution, and I think learning from the young generation, we sometimes neglect that. But yeah, they're probably the most informed in a lot of ways. There's so many things coming at them, which can be a positive and a negative.
Yeah.
But there's something we can learn.
If
right?
you look at physics, right? all the like the new developments in physics happens from younger physicists, right? Because they're the ones who are looking at the world through a completely open lens, you know. And so, but if you look at like history, the best historians are people who have cumulative knowledge, they reach their prime in like their 60s, right? So it's like, so that's, I feel like my role as an older wrestler is to give them the cumulative knowledge, and my job in learning from them is opening my own mind to what wrestling is now as opposed to what it used to be.
I love it. I'm learning through this interview as well. It kind of changes my thought process as well. I'm going to reconsider the Mount Rushmore question moving forward. Moving on to like wrestling in Canada. You just had a show in Edmonton, which is, you know, a hotbed in Alberta for wrestling alongside Calgary, we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
But what's it like wrestling in Canada? Because you have your experience from the independent days as well.
Yeah.
How's that experience for you?
Oh, I love it because Canadian wrestling fans are very passionate about wrestling, and they're not afraid to be vociferous in their reactions, right? They go all in with their stuff, and they also, and I think this is one of the things that I love about Canadian wrestling fans is that they really love the wrestling part of it, like the in-ring things of what's going on. You could go out there, and this would happen in WWE, this would happen in independent shows, this has happened in AEW shows, where a lot of times in the United States, if they don't know the person coming out, they'll be like, oh, what is this? But Canadian fans will give the person a chance, and they'll watch their wrestling, and if they're a great wrestler, they'll, great job, you know, like that sort of thing, and they'll give them a great reaction. I love that, you know. So yeah, I also like it when, you know, there have been times when I've been a bad guy in Canada, which is also really fun because I've had people storm the ring on me in Canada.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, which is also fantastic. So
Okay, so your next show is going to be in Vancouver, Saturday, May 11th, at Rogers Arena after they're done with the hockey.
yeah, it's going to be a quick turnaround for the production people.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So what can Vancouverites expect in Collision? It's coming to Vancouver.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really excellent show. We've got, I'm really excited for the match that I've got. It's me and Claudio Castagnoli against a team called Top Flight, and I think Top Flight is an example of what makes AEW special. So Top Flight are some of our EVPs saw them on Instagram. They were doing independent shows, and they saw some of their stuff that they did on Instagram. And they're like, oh, these guys are fantastic. They brought them, gave them a tryout, and then all of a sudden, put them on TV. These young guys who hadn't proven themselves, but they got an opportunity. And now here we are 3 years in, and they're some of our best young guys that we've got in the company. And then they do they're just incredibly athletic, which gives me a little bit of trepidation, to be honest, because as I get older, you lose some of that mobility. And Dante Martin from Top Flight, he just does these things. I'm like, how is that possible? That didn't exist in wrestling.
You're questioning physics.
Yeah. Feynman, you don't know what you're talking about. You should see Dante Martin. So, yeah.
All right, love it. If you don't have tickets, get them now. Saturday, May 11th, Rogers Arena. Check it out, AEW Collision. And Bryan Danielson, thank you very much for joining us on Hockey Night in Canada, Punjabi. I'd love to welcome you back anytime you're rolling through the neighborhood. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you.
All right, we'll catch you next time.